Hi everybody, Mature Simmer here. So welcome to another video in my Non-Aviator Flight Sim series. So in this video I'm going to explain and demonstrate what's called a pattern. So a lot of things you can do in the beginning, especially when you're just learning the basics of flight, to do it in a quick and compact way, you'll do what's called pattern work. And basically, a pattern is a small rectangle around the airport. So we're here on the runway, and most of you who are starting out, especially if you're a non-aviator, hey, the thing is going to be, the excitement you've got is, I want to get in a plane, I want to fly. I've showed you how to get in a plane, explained you can pick a runway to start out on. So you can go to this video here that's linked up in the corner, and it'll show you how to get to this point if you don't know how to do that in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And if you're using another flight simulator and watching this, again, you just need to get yourself in here. So you're going to basically take off. You're going to then climb to 1,000 feet above ground level. So that does require you to at least understand how do you know when you're there. So I'm going to show you how we can do that here in the aircraft I'm in a moment before we take off. And then you're basically going to proceed for a little while, and then you're going to turn 90 degrees, and most patterns are left patterns. What that means is if you visualize a rectangle that goes to the left of the runway here. So everything we do will be left turns. Some airports will then be right patterns. If the airport doesn't say, the default is left pattern. So if someone asks, if you're flying into an airport you don't know, and they're telling you to join the pattern, and you've looked at the charts and it doesn't say anything specific about the pattern, you can assume it's a left pattern and join it accordingly. But basically the pattern of flight is 1,000 feet above ground level. And typically you're trying never to go more than about a half a mile away from the airport, from the runway. So you're not going to run the certain legs, the short legs are not going to go that far. Sometimes the runways are going to be longer than a half mile, so those are the long legs. So we're on the runway, we're on a long leg. So when we take off, we're on departure for a little bit. It's not really part of the leg. It's not a named leg. And then we turn 90 degrees, and then we're on what's called the crosswind leg. You may still be climbing in the crosswind leg, so you don't have to wait to get to 1,000 feet to turn. When you choose to do that, unless you're being run through a pattern in detail by an air traffic controller, but in an airport like this small one that I've spawned into, there's no tower here. You're simply letting people know you're doing pattern work so that other pilots in the area won't suddenly be surprised, but it's up to me when I start to turn left. So in the demonstration, we're going to do this pretty quickly to keep this as short as possible. You'll do crosswind, and you then continue in that direction for a little bit of time again, but no more than where you're getting half a mile away. So sometimes you'll do 30 seconds of flying or something, because especially in a plane like this, you're not going very fast. I think you can go up to a mile away, but beyond that, they're expecting you to stay in the close airspace of the airport, because normally air traffic isn't really worried about you except when you're coming back to the runway. You then turn 90 degrees, and then you're on what's called the downwind leg. And sometimes air traffic will ask you to call in on the downwind. And that way they know you're there and that you're going to be approaching the runway soon, and if they need to vector you in or sequence you with other traffic, they can do that, and they're not suddenly surprised that you're showing up out of nowhere. Then the final leg, before you're landing, you turn 90 degrees again, so you'll be coming back toward the runway. That's the base leg. There is a setup for the base leg where basically you're looking at the runway basically about 45 degrees over your shoulder, because you basically need enough time to be able to line up and land. You can make the downwind leg longer especially if you're learning. I'd encourage you to do that. Go a little further out so you have more time. But as you get more comfortable, again, the base leg can be pretty close, and then you turn the final 90 degrees to finish the entire 360, and then you're on final. And again, you can then continue to do that. So you can request what's called with the option if there's air traffic control involved, and that basically means you can do what's called a touch and go, which basically means you're going to land, and then you're going, you're going to touch the runway, you're going to go, but you're immediately going to throttle up and you're going to leave again, and you're going to keep going. Or you can do, just where you don't touch down, you just fly over. You approach, but then never actually land, and then you can do a full stop, which basically means you're ending, and then they'll basically clear you to land. But otherwise, you're cleared for the option, and then you can decide, and that includes that you could land, but usually you're letting them know that you'd prefer to land, so that they can clear you, because again, the runway is not going to be vacated as quickly with that last option than it is with the others. That's what we need to do. So when you're in here, you can hide the yoke usually by clicking on it. And so this strange thing over here, again, for a non-aviator, I would assume everything in this cockpit is strange. But this, ALT gives it away, but it looks like a clock, but obviously it doesn't have 12 numbers, it has 10. This is the altimeter in a basic general aviation aircraft. This is your speed indicator. So again, you don't want to go too fast. This helps you do things, and we're not going to get into all the instruments. That's going to be a different video. This is the one you need to know about, and basically, again, you need to be 1,000 feet above the runway. And usually Microsoft Flight Simulator is pretty good at getting you in the right location and the right settings if you're spawning in on the runway especially. And so in this case, I did look it up on something else. The elevation of this airport is 626 feet, which is about what this is indicating. So since the pattern needs to be up at 1,000 feet, I need to basically go up to 1,600 feet, and then that's where I would do the pattern work. So that gives us that indicator. And so basically the little hand is, think of it as the thousands indicator. So at this point, we're at not at 1,000, but as this moves up, I'll try to kind of keep it in view a little bit as I take off. You'll see eventually it'll point to 1, and then it'll rotate around. And so when it's pointing to 2, we're going to be at 1,200. So I basically need this large hand over here in the same place, but then the indicator is going to be kind of closer to the 2. And then this other indicator ends up, if I go all the way around. So obviously at that point I'd be at 10,000 feet. That'll move me over there. Again, a plane like this it's not going to go to 20,000 feet. It's not capable of climbing that high. It can't generate enough lift. So you're never going to go past that, but other aircraft with these type of altimeters can do that, and then this will indicate kind of the 10,000s. So for pattern work, that's really all you need. I'm not going to cover everything else that you need to understand about the plane, because those will be included in the flight videos and so forth. But at this point, we're going to get ready. We're going to take off. Again, I'm going to lower my view a bit so we can see the altimeter. I'm going to throttle up, and I'm going to release the parking brake, and then you got to keep the plane on the center line. Again, I'm intentionally not really giving you a lot of information, because that is not what this video is about, like how to keep it on the center line. There are controls I'm needing to use on the plane. If you want to look at how a plane flies and how you control that, there's a video here that I'll link to as well. I'd encourage you to do that. And then once we're at 80, we can rotate up. And as you can see, it's a bit challenging. Now the goal is you want to stay on the line if you can. And you can see now we're at 800. Probably, I'm not going to go the whole way. This is a fixed gear aircraft, so I'm not going to do anything else. And so again, I was at Oh, the other thing I need to know is what my headings are. So I'm at 270, 275, so I need to go to 180 now. So basically, you take 10 off, add 1 back in, basically. So you can go from 270 to 170, add 10. That's the way I do it as a non-aviator. So still got to go over about 10 more degrees. So you can see the heading in the center of the Garmin 1000. You can see the altimeter. I'm at 1400. Again, I don't want to get more than about half a mile away, but I should be able to, climb up to the full amount. And I'm basically wanting to level out. And now at this point, I can turn again. And so we're going to take 180, 80, add 10, 90 is going to be how I'm at the downwind leg. And when the runway is 270 like that, I mean, it's pretty simple, but basically you're rotating back in here. Went a little too far. And now I'm a little too high, so I'm going to come down. And then you're basically trying to get straight and level. I'm going to slow down. That's going to help me do that. Again, I'm a little high. I mean, there's nothing that's, so you can look over here, and then again, there's 2 runways, so we're kind of running somewhat parallel. We're coming a little close, I could tell. And so I'm looking, to see how I'm doing. I'm still turning too much. All right, so now I'm looking for the end of the runway, which we just passed. So I'm getting to the point where, and now I'm too low. So, and this is part of what you're trying to do in pattern work, is you're trying to get good at, doing all of that. And you're looking, whoops, you want to be careful not to move over. And you want to get far enough. Again, there's nothing that says you have to turn when you're at 45 degrees, but rule of thumb is you want to be at about that point. And again, because I was drifting over at like 80, I'm almost too close. So I'm gonna drift out a bit here. All right, and at this point, we're gonna come back up here. And because I have digital instruments here, I can see my vertical speed on that, so I'm rising a bit. That's my elevation, so I'm getting closer to the 1600 that I should be at. Let me get myself closer to that, because that'll just make things a little bit easier. Because again, it was 1626, so we want to get ourselves there. And kind of, getting ourselves set now doesn't really matter much, because we need to come in and land, because we don't want to go too far. I mean, we can go as far as we want, but so basically we're getting to 0 or 360 here. And then that will get us across, and then you're basically looking for the runway. Oh good, I got lost. So this is a perfect example. But now we know we want to be at 270. And I'm going to slow down a bit. Well, that's probably more than a bit, so. Alright, there we go. There's the, oh no, that's not the airport. Well, see, this is not good. It's going to be a bad video for you, but this is a good example of, VFR stuff. And this is partially why you don't want to go too far. Because, yeah, it gets to be a bit much. Well, let me see. All right, so it's actually, I've overshot it by quite a bit. And I'm looking at charts. There we go. So, I've gone a bit too far, but we're going to now pull back. And this is going to be a really bad example because I am going to come in very quickly here. And this again is because I've had enough practice. I'm comfortable with this.
500.
And so I can do that, and I know, again, it's 626. You know, the slower I land, the better. But now we should be good. We'll be slowing down, but we're just about where we need to be. The trees are a little bit forgiving, because there are some airports that will have things way, way too close. All right, and then you just pull the throttle all the way back, flare up a little bit, and there you go. And so, again, if there was air traffic involved, we would have called the pattern and so forth. And so part of the issue was this runway was actually 28. I thought it was 27. So I technically was off by 10 degrees through the whole pattern. But that is pattern work. So, you know, I could do, if I was doing a touch and go, I would have done this and I would have already immediately throttled up completely. You know, I would have had to adjust my flaps again because at this point I've got the flaps all the way set for landing. But at this point we're just, you know, doing the final roll, and, you know, we'll get ourselves where we need to. But hopefully that gives you an example of what you would do if you wanted to run some pattern work. And so if you're just getting used to flying, that is one of the things I encourage you to do. You know, find a small airport near where you live if you want to look at scenery that you're familiar with and so forth. Find a small airport where you don't live if you want to see something new. You know, there's no requirement you have to be in a certain space. This little line I'm passing here is basically where you're clearing the runway. So you're always looking for those things, and at this point, I'd be clear of the runway. I could stop. The benefit of pattern work is you get to do a lot of the things you need to do in flying very quickly in a compressed time frame. So you're taking off, you're landing, you're working on your approaches, you're working on your turns, you're starting to figure out how to fly straight and level. You're figuring out how to do turns where you're not losing or gaining altitude. You know, there's a lot of skills you can work on in pattern work, and it's just a good way to get used to a plane. And so if you haven't flown a certain aircraft, you want to get used to its handling. That's also a good thing that it's for. Now you know what pattern work is, you know how to do it. Patterns become important for coming into an airport and so forth, because again, sometimes they'll use the pattern as part of their landing sequence, especially for small airports like this. All those skills and all that information is for a later time. For now, that gives you what you need for this video. If you've enjoyed it but haven't dropped a like, please consider that. And if you are not a subscriber to the channel yet, please consider that as well. And I will see you next time.